let me just remind you that on this Sunday sermon is meant to demonstrate to you that Dharma must be shared, and Dharma must be shared very naturally, spontaneously, and that's the way I understood the Buddha taught. He never planned academically. He didn't hand out notes and things like that. So he just spoke as he felt inspired, as he felt he wanted to communicate with his students. And that's what we hope to do, and we believe that that's a better way and it can be done. Of course, to do like this, it has to be at the expense of, for instance, rigorous planning and systematic presentation and all these things, you see. So you have to have this understanding in your mind. And of course there will be some repetitions. We can't have it because things come out on my heart and I want to just say. And things that I've said before, I want to emphasize again. But these are important things. I'm talking about repetition. I told you, when you recite the sutra, you're actually doing the same thing. For instance, you do the Heart Sutra. Every day for years. It's a very short sutra. You're reciting, you're repeating. But ideally, every time when you repeat, you do it creatively, not mechanically. And you go through a different spiritual experience. You gain higher levels of insight. That's the meaning of sutra repetition. When you chant, even not only the Heart Sutra, but even the Pali Sutra, for instance. And you see the same thing. It's, oh yeah, I've done it. I've seen it once. Is enough. You mustn't. When you come to religious experiences, you have to put aside these kind of stubborn presuppositions of a so-called sensible, intelligent man or woman. You have to be humble and open. Every time you think, when I read the Buddha's message, I'll get something. And with that kind of mental preparation, you begin to recite, you read the same thing. I also have told you many times, how a very large part of my life has been spent in reading and thinking of the sutras, Buddha's teaching. But every time, even now, whenever I read something from the sutta and suddenly something strikes me, or something has struck me before also, but I feel it at a higher level as if I gain something. Even when I teach, it's the same thing. So I don't mechanically repeat my lectures. All of you know, I never do that. Even the same course, even the same topic, would not be mechanically repeated. Because every time when I lecture, I'm creating it from my heart also. Of course, there are certain certain material that are more or less standard, or they are fixed, but then depends on how you communicate it, how you feel about it, how you share your inspirations. So when a teacher teaches, the teacher can be inspired, and the teacher gains that way. Yeah. So this is about our Sunday sermon. And again, do not cut this part out because it is important. It should be repeated. And there should be, people who listen must be reminded. Okay, today I'm going to talk about one thing that I feel concerned in my mind for the past couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks. But of course, I talked about this topic, and in fact, I remember once I wrote out a whole short essay and wanted to present it in a conference in India, but it didn't happen for various reasons. I didn't take part in that particular session. This is the topic on the 4 reliances. Yeah, the 4 reliances. In Chinese we call the Sei Yi. It's a very important topic because it constitutes a very inspiring guidelines for us to be Buddhist. you see. And how do we study Buddhism? We don't just study for the sake of mere study, for the sake of mere knowledge, for the sake of mere collection of information. And that's what we mean when we say that that the Buddha's teaching is creative education. We should study, we should understand intellectually, but all this is for the sake of ultimately transforming our consciousness, bringing us up to higher levels of human possibilities, of our human potential, unfolding our potential. So there are many Buddha's teachings, many teachings of the Buddha, which of course, in fact I can say that the whole of the Buddha's teaching effectuate this process of transformation. Today, this topic on the four reliances is one of them, and one of the important ones. So firstly, what are the four reliances? I think those who have been studying Buddhism should be able to tell me the answer. What are they for? Number one is reliance on the Dharma, not the Buddha. Relying on the teaching that you can say accords with truth. That's the meaning of Dharma. 叫依法啦，依法不依人，第一依法不依人。Yeah. So the Buddha has left behind, as I said, very important guiding principles for us to practice as Buddhists. For us to practice to be enlightened, to fully unfold human potential according to his teaching. This is called the fourfold reliance. So remember that if you haven't come across this or if you are not very clear about this. So the first one is reliance on the Dharma, Yifa, and not reliance on the person, the Buddha. I will explain on this soon. The second one is reliance on the meaning and not the letter. It gives you a very modern ring also, you know. It's profoundly relevant to us, even in modern time. Reliance on the meaning. When you try to understand the Buddha's teaching, or when you read the sutta, when you study, ultimately it's not just the letters. The letters point to meaning. Very important is to understand the true meaning of what Buddha is trying to say. In a given sentence, in a given sutta, what is the context? So the meaning is more important than the letter. 就叫做中文叫咩啊？依義不依文，或者不依語。嘅義就係意思嘅意義嘅義啦。So number 3 is also extremely important. Reliance on the Nita Artha Sutra, under using the Sanskrit, and not the Neya Artha Sutra. 中文叫咩啊？依了義，不依不了義。了義同埋不了義 is a very important and extremely useful guideline for us. So the meaning is, in English, reliance on teachings that are of the nature of ultimate meaning. Whose teachings, whose meaning have been fully drawn out. The literal meaning of nita. Nita is a past participle. Drawn out, let out. 中文叫做了義咁嘅意思啦。And not reliance on teaching whose meanings are relative, implicit, are not yet drawn out, to be drawn out. The word neya means that. Neya is is a future passive participle. Neya means to be drawn out. One nita has been drawn out as well. Something whose meaning is to be drawn out means that the meaning is not as it seems, and the meaning sometimes is given because of context, because of the need of the person, of the time, of the situation, but it doesn't represent teachings with meaning of ultimate truth. So for instance, Buddha talks about I, using the word I, using the word we, and you will question if Buddhism teaches no self and that we must not attach to we, why the Buddha emphasizes that we must be careful, we must be mindful, I do this, I do that. But when the Buddha uses these terms, for instance, these phrases, he uses them according to the situation, in order to emphasize something. Right? So you must rely on teachings like, when the Buddha teaches that there is no self, there are only the five aggregates, for instance. Now this will be a teaching that is nita, that is of ultimate meaning. So you see, even when I very simply translate them and explain to you, you can see the importance, how relevant to us, how pragmatic, you see, as a spiritual guidelines for our practice of Buddhism. So remember these four reliances. Okay. Today, of course, it's a long topic. I'm going to just talk mainly on the first one. As we go back, what is it? Reliance on the Dharma, not the Pukala. That is, on the teaching, or the word Dharma means a teaching. It also means truth, because the Buddha's teaching accords with truth. That's why the Buddha's teaching is called Dharma, and that word Dharma means truth. Dharma has so many meanings. Okay? It's the truth that the Buddha discovered. It's not what he invents as a philosopher or as a thinker. You know, people want to present the Buddha this way in modern time. When Buddhists, they are proud saying Buddha is a great thinker. You know, of course he's a great thinker, but it's much more than just a mere thinker. And they want to present Buddha as a philosopher. You know, and they especially want to fit the Buddha's teaching into modern philosophies. And Buddha is existentialist, Buddha is empiricist, Buddha is this and that. You categorize the Buddha. But actually, the Buddha teaches what he has discovered. That is the truth. And that truth transcends time and space. The truth is eternal. That truth is not dependent on, in the words of the tradition, whether the Tathagatas, the Buddhas, appear in the world or not. The truth is always there. The Buddha discovers it. So we cannot think of the Buddha's teaching as a gradual improvement of his thinking. You know, when he was young, he thought like that, and he's a bit older, and he thought in a different way. You know, he improved on his version, and when he's criticized by opponents, he changes his emphasis. It's not like that. Of course, there are variations in his presentation. Certainly, it's true that he responds to the need and he tries to think, how should I present it? Maybe the next time, you know, to similar audience, knowing them. All these things are there, but essentially, as far as the ultimate meaning of what he wants to communicate, this meaning, these teachings are truth, and truth do not change, are not dependent on time. So we can't think of Buddha, for instance, teaching. People say, you know, the Buddha didn't teach dependent origination. He taught only simple thing like this, and then he expanded it and then elaborated on it. There may be elaboration in terms of explanation, but then the ultimate the principle of conditionality is a truth that he discovered. You see, when he was enlightened, that truth is always the same. So that is Dharma. Yeah. How about the word Putkala? Putkala means a person, literally means a person. The teaching that we must rely on as Buddhists, as traditionals, we must rely on the Dharma, not the person. Can be understood at different levels. The most important emphasis here is that we must not be attached to the authority of the person. For instance, a teacher, even the Buddha himself. That's why in the Kalama Sutta, the Buddha says, don't rely on the words of the teacher. That is to say, merely, you have to be very careful. You have to understand carefully. Merely, that is as exclusive, right? As exclusive authority of a teaching. So if a teaching is given by a particular guru or teacher, you mustn't think, because it's taught by that teacher, then it must be true. It must be truth. That would be wrong. Even if the teacher happens to be the Buddha, you have to think. The Buddha says you have to reflect, you have to think, you have to experience yourself. In the light of your own experience, you understand, oh yes, what the teacher or what the Buddha is saying is quite true. It's so true. And you become so convinced. Then you accept it. So the acceptance can be a gradual process. Of course, you have to start with some faith, some confidence. If you don't have even that is another point. If you don't have even receptivity to begin with, then you're not prepared to listen. And today people are too smart when they say, the Buddha has taught us not to rely even on him. Then I should be a free thinker. How good are you as a free thinker? How good are you at your thinking? How good is the human intellectual capacity? You have to question this. In fact, you can't grow. You can't come to higher levels of human potentiality unless you are open, unless you are receptive that yes, there are higher truths, there are higher levels, there are better, more profound human experiences. Unless you're open to this, unless you're receptive to this, you can't begin even to want to learn, to listen, to practice the Dhamma. So receptivity is also extremely important, and the word for receptivity is, one of the important words is called, so-called faith, Shraddha. The word means placing your heart. Shraddha, Da is a place to put, Shraddha is a heart. That is not the concept of blind faith. As the Buddha has taught, I just said in the Kalama Sutta, we mustn't accept anything blindly just because something is taught by a teacher, even by the Buddha, for instance, right? But you must have at least receptivity or openness. You must be prepared to say, yeah, I feel something is drawing me, something is inspiring me. There's some meaning in what is being said, or in what I'm reading from the sutta, for instance. Then you continue to seek, continue to listen, and you progress. Of course, all in the light of your own experience also. Talking about own experiences, a lot more is to be said, and how much can you trust your experience, for instance, right? But the point here is that there are 2 points. One is, as I said, to begin with, we cannot accept anything blindly. And we cannot be overwhelmed by the authority of the person, the teacher. The second point is, however, at the same time, we must be open to the teacher. We must open to truth, open to higher possibilities. So the correct Buddhist practice, you can say, again, is a middle way. You see, you need the element of faith. A human being is not confined by his intellectual, rational, logical capacity. In fact, these are very low capacities of a human being, of an ordinary human being. He has tremendous power that can be developed if he has faith, if he can bring out his emotions and feelings. You know, if he is prepared to enter into higher realm of experiences, that's where religion comes in. If you shut yourself out and think, I'm smart, I'm educated, I'm logical, then you can be a very miserable, so-called logical person, rational person. You will never develop spiritually. So these are the important things to bear in mind in understanding the first reliance that Buddha has taught us. Okay? Now, as to what Dharma constitutes in practical terms, there's a lot more to be said. When you come to a class, for instance, you say, yeah, I'm learning the Dharma. This is called the Buddha-Dharma Center, for instance. Yeah, you come here, hopefully you'll learn the Dharma. So, but what is the Dharma, you see? How do you learn the Dharma? Is it just joining an MA course or diploma course? Or is it just listening to a sermon? I have made distinctions between the Dharma and Buddhism, you see, and Buddhism as an institutionalized religion. All this I've said a lot. But the important thing is to remember is always go back to the Buddha for the true Dharma. Of course, the Buddha's true Dharma can be found, can be dug out from the sutras, from the written records. But also, we can learn a lot from, for instance, his life, an example that's equally important. Learn to feel the Buddha in your heart. That's the secret, if you like, to be a happy Buddhist, and to overcome your depressions, to overcome your emptiness in your heart, to feel meaning as being Buddhist. Learn to have the Buddha in your heart. I have said that, for instance, sometimes I feel I can't help praising the Christians when they say that, they tell you to have Christ, bring Christ in your life, bring Christ in your heart. I don't believe that Christ, personally, this is my personal experience and so on, my personal understanding, right or wrong. I don't believe that, for instance, Christ, if he was a historical person, that he was indeed God. I think he must have been a great person, great teacher. But perhaps to me, that he is no more than that. But whatever it is, it was wonderful for the Christian to teach the other fellow Christians that you must keep Christ. If you really believe in Christ, you keep Christ in your heart. So now, what I'm saying is that, in fact, the Buddhists should learn from that, and should emphasize that to be true Buddhist, to feel that you're not Buddhist just by tradition or just by mere intellectual conviction, but you're happy to be Buddhist. You're happy to struggle as Buddhist. You must learn to have the Buddha in your heart, in your life all the time. And then at times of sorrow, at times of depression, at times of problems, you feel inspired that there's still hope in life. You can still walk forward. There are still solutions to be found. The Buddha was deeply depressed before his realization. He experienced a lot of emptiness that modern human experience now. And he went through a lot of struggles morally. He had to overcome his craving, his hatred, his ignorance before his enlightenment. But he succeeded. So when you truly live the Buddha in your heart, you feel that Buddhism is something alive. It's not just in the book, not just in the classroom, not just in the MA course or PhD course. So that's how you open up yourself, be receptive to the Dharma. That Dharma is very important, right? Now that brings us to a connected point, very, very important connected point. That is about the person. Now when I say like this, I might sound contradictory. I said that the Buddha has told us to rely on the Dharma, not on the person. Then I emphasize about the Buddha as the person, the inspirational person. Are these two contradictory? Well, they are not. It depends on how you practice the middle way, you see. So